May I ask you what kind of community do you work with?
I'm from the south of Mexico, from the state which calls Oaxaca. All my work had been about indigenous group here in Oaxaca. It's because it's my land, but also because it's the state with the largest number of indigenous groups, 16. And Mexico has the largest number of indigenous groups in America. I've been working with different groups, Zapotecos, Mixtecos, Huaves, Soques, Zapotecs. There is Zapotecs from the Sierra Sur, Sierra Norte, and Zapotecs from the Isthmus, close to the coast.
When did you get to this idea that maybe I should look at how these communities relate to the future?
I guess as anthropologists, we usually will work with the micro data or even just with one person. And I started like that with a small group, but then I started to participate more in the collective situations. And then I started to realize, well, actually what they are doing is something related with anticipate the future, related with questions, for example, with what kind of territory do we want, and what do we want our children to inherit, related with the natural resources.
But you noticed that they were doing foresight without calling it foresight, or they were doing at least futures thinking, which is a very human capacity to do. Just
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's a profession as well doesn't mean it's exclusively for
Yeah.
professionals. What particular elements from their practices or rituals resembled foresight practices? When did you say, oh, this sounds like quite a method for exploring the future of a community or a next generation?
I was chatting with my supervisor here in the fellowship that I am doing. I said every human being doing foresight in a way, no? Especially in this indigenous community. One of the main elements is the organization of the life compared to the Western culture is more collective. The decisions and the institutions, for example, Tequio, in different communities is something pretty similar, just the name changed a bit. Let's say a collective anticipation for certainties for the community. And Tequio is a collective situation in which each person do something to solve or improve something in the community. It can be related with different situations, with a celebration to build something in the community, for example, a school, to clean, is organizing collective effort through something that hasn't happened yet, and with people that will depend on later. It's super diverse. For example, in Oaxaca, the state is divided by municipalities. We have 540 municipalities, and more than 400 are organized in this
Oh, wow.
way. They have an assembly, and usually the assembly changes each year. They have their own way to organize how to change. The persons who lead the assembly each year, usually to be part of the assembly is related with the land. The person has a piece of land there and I taking care of the land. They need to elect one person in the family, like a representation. Men have more opportunity to be part of this. But even if the women cannot participate, they do this in other places, no? Trying to influence the decisions in a way. But there are also, in this generation especially, women who start to say, well, we want a place there. Also, I was chatting with persons in one town that I visited, and they told me we started to have problems with the young persons because they migrate to the cities to study the university, and after that, they didn't want to their town, to the town. So we started to chat with them to try to find an arrangement to give them something. For example, if you return to the town, we will give you the opportunity to lead and to tell us how to do something related with the forest, because they studied something related with that, or the engineers, or education. The third one is the Council of the Elderly. It's a group of elder people from the town recognized as important, wise persons. So when there are, for example, some files related with how to define what to do, they participate in the decisions. They can be males and females.
While starting to understand better these practices that are probably very old in these communities, You say this kind of smells and tastes like foresight. Do you think they can mature more? Or what would you hope for them to become? A bit more professional, a bit more inclusive? Aren't they perfect just the way they are?
This is a good question. In my work, I'm trying to understand how they organize and to learn more about how they plan and participate to deal with these uncertainties. The collective organization is the interest for me because I think it could be part of other places that are not just indigenous, because also Mexico is super diverse, and also to see how this can work in urban places, for example, these collective ways to organize. So I think that in a way, I would like to understand and also to show what they can teach us. It's an opportunity also to not see them just as a document or something that we need to preserve, to protect, as a person from which we can learn.
I understand very well what you mean. There is something about this idea of togetherness and of thinking and working together for our community and for the future of our community that is lost in spaces where we don't work in small communities anymore. The idea that we are strongly fused together, and whatever we do and we negotiate, we fight even, is a way to decide our present and our future. I think democracy kept something of this, but it's so big scale and with layers of representation that you're totally disconnected from the life that you're meant to build together. I would like to ask whether these communities have a different relationship with time. How do they see time?
It depends. Each community has their own way to see the world. We can see this even in the language, what they think and feel and see. Specific about the time, the difference I'm seeing in these communities, like past, present, and future, are more interconnected than many of modern frame assume. Also, there are some communities that think that the future is back and the past is in front. It's difficult to try to imagine this, but for them, it makes sense.
But if you think about it, it makes sense. You can visit your past, whereas the future is something that you cannot gaze into, is the unknown. So I understand this metaphor of future is in the back because I cannot see it. It's like you're walking backwards.
I can give another example related with the Mexican culture. Here, the past is super present in the present, and in the future, related with the death. I don't want to romanticize something, but it's part of our culture. When some person from our family die, for us, the life of this person in a way obviously ends. But this person is present, and each year we do some rituals to give a space in our daily life to this present. For example, when someone had to take a decision, this person think, okay, but if my dad or my granddad would be here, what this person would tell me what decision I had to take. So they are present in a way.
I feel you're right. It's not just some rituals may sound, especially from the outside, interesting, exotic customs. What I hear from you also has a very wise background. It's a very practical way of infusing your decision or your thinking with the wisdom of someone who is not here or with a value system. As in, you keep something truly alive, not their body, but their wisdom. You carry bits of it by simulating. What would they do? What would Jesus do? You can go read back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just for personal remembrance. I don't want to forget my grandparent because I love them and I miss them. But it is a way of extending your own reason and judgment and values.
It's like a way to create something more connected, not like the past cuts here, the present cuts here, the future cuts. Another big topic would be the dreams. There are some communities, the dreams are super important. So every morning when people do their breakfast or started the day, they ask to all of them, what did you dream? Because if some persons dream that someone will die, or it's not that this person will die, something in the community will happen. If someone dreams something positive, it's something positive for all. And if someone dream something negative can be something that needs to be solved. Another elements, for example, can be the shaman, a spiritual institution in the communities, and the shamans can deal with the times, can go to the past, can go to the future, and try to fix things there. And this is an all related with how the past present is not linear, can be more like, I don't know, like spiral.
It sounds like they understand knowledge is very diverse and coming from the realm of the subconscious, which is the dreams, from the spirits of the ancestors. Simply put, they draw intelligence and insight from more than the reasoning of the people present in the room in this moment. The space of knowledge is wider. I also take my dreams very seriously, not just as a residue. It's not marginal. For me, it's a source of questioning. My subconscious is beaming subjects for me that are value based and they don't have a resolution yet. If we understand the dreams as the subconsciousness talking to us, and the subconsciousness is also shared. It's like an ocean that I share with you and with the world. So in that water reside questions and dilemmas that are very important to all of us. And I'm not no expert on that, but I do think that in the global north, or what we call the West, we sometimes tend to be a bit condescending towards this kind of knowledge. Like, oh, isn't that cute? Or isn't that interesting? But it's not just interesting. We just don't know how to relate to it. Do you think the Western world or the global North can learn something without appropriating it or reducing it or simplifying it? Can you translate this kind of wisdom and intelligence not only as an interesting practice, but really to teach it in a meaningful way? And of course, you might not know the answer all by yourself, but do you think it's possible?
It's a beautiful question. I was chatting with one person lately about some of the main ideas of modern, the reality that we live every day looks more like an illusion. No? Modernity is the main way of the groups to organize the life. In the future, maybe it would be different, no? Or we will go to the past, maybe, or who knows. Many persons have asked me this, especially in the urban places. The towns are small, and I think many things can be possible there because it's small and you can organize. And yes, many things cannot be escalated to other places. But I think moments to reflect about how we organize our life as an individual or families or small communities can be possible. This spirit to be collective and to organize as better as possible to go out of this uncertainty is there. I think the idea is not just copy this, because you can take a community assembly and bring to Copenhagen and expect that it will work in the same way like here in the Mixtec region in Oaxaca. And I think that's not the point. My main desire is that what can travel are the questions, and how do we make decisions collectively rather than just individually, and how do we include peoples who will be affected by what we decided. I think that these are not just indigenous questions. What interests me is using what I'm learning in these communities in Oaxaca to think about what collective force could look like beyond those territories, maybe as a provocation to other frames.
I think the way you put it makes a lot of sense. It's not about importing or exporting practices, but using a frame to challenge or to tease a way of thinking or a way of looking as provocations, as you said. And it can work the other way around.
Yeah.
They can be provoked as well in some aspects. It's a two-way provocation lane.
I have the feeling that the knowledge that they have related to natural resources, for example, is something valuable. Nature is not something separate for the community. It's another elements. They are just part of this group of elements, no? And there are rituals and there are ways to try to find equilibrium. And I think that this is something really valuable. Maybe I'm romantic a bit, but the interrelation is more strong in that place. Last year I was doing a project, a small participation in a project related with um, protected areas and natural parks. And if I remember well, data says the 4% of the population in the world self-identify as indigenous. And more than the 90% of the protected areas are located in the territories of the indigenous groups.
Yes.
It's crazy to imagine that.
I noticed in our conversation that you are paying attention to not romanticize something. Between me and you are closest to these communities. But you also want to pay attention not to talk in a way that might sound exoticizing, romanticizing. I mean, it's a fair question for all of us. How to open a new source of knowledge, not new, an ancient source of knowledge, but maybe new for others, without turning it to a bit of a spectacle. How do you do it?
It's very difficult. In places like the global south is something super important because many of the problems that the communities are dealing now is related with this romanticization, with this folklorization, transform a community or a person into an object. Be open to hear and see what the other person say, because otherwise my word would be just speaking, my voice is speaking all the time. Understand that I'm working there, given a traduction of something, and always be a representation. Always try to not deny what I feel or what I think, because this is an illusion. My present will be part of the transformation. Also, I like to work with questions, follow the how more than why or who, or I like the question how.
Because you want to make sense of all the diversity of how they live a life, as in how different life can be, even from person to person, from community to community.
The questions in my work are open questions. I will never end the answer. No, other persons continue the discussion.
I was fascinated by this concept, the one that says sentipensar, thinking, feeling. I know it's present in Latin America. I don't know if this is a notion that is relevant also for the communities you explored. And if so, what does it mean to feel and think, or to sentir and pensar at the same time?
Thank you for the question. So valuable for me to hear this question, because it's also a way to recognize that also in these places, the people are trying to create concepts that we can use in other situations out of the global south. It's interesting. It's just one word. Orlando Files Borda, the author, puts the two words together. We don't have to separate the rational choices and our feelings, because actually we don't do that. It's always there, no? We cannot divide it. And also, this concept and others are connected to how the people and different groups here in Latin America see and understand the world. For example, another one for the indigenous group are many, and it calls Summa Causai. It's about living well in a relationship with others, not just other beings. And sentipensar is also related with that, no? To don't divide even more the individual. It's not just rational. I refuse the separation between knowledge and experience. The body is not just something that covers us or cover our brain. It's the way that we experiment the world. So it's also part of relationships. And I think that changes how I imagine the future, because futures, I think, are not just abstract projections. They are fields. We feel it in the land, in what the body knows for living in a particular place, and the obligations you carry towards people who aren't here yet. For foresight, it's important to think that the imagination is not something neutral. The imagination always comes from somewhere. And if it's true, then who is in the room when you imagine the future matters enormously. Thank you for the sentipensar idea. How you get that?
I think I read it in an essay a few years ago. I cannot place it very well. I feel it's a perfect notion. Sentipensar, as you said, two words put together. It's not two verbs, it's one verb. You can instantly get it what it's about. And I liked this idea. You think and feel at the same time, no separation. That's a beautiful invention of a concept that the Spanish language managed to put it in a way that is very intuitive for a reader.